Hello, my name is Derek Temple, and today's tutorial is on how to make a simple website in PHP and in Python. This is my PHP website that we're going to be making, and this is the Python website. Now, I've already made the site, and I'm going to walk you through the code and show you how to make these two sites. This first is the PHP. We have the index.php file, and the index.php file is going to set up how to display things. And then we're going to pull information from different pages. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set an include, and we're going to include a file from models called view.php. This is a simple class file to create a view, and we'll get into this class file here in a minute. Now, in the Python, we have index.py, which serves the same purpose as index.php. And what we do here is we first of all have to declare where our Python files are located. And then from there we can start working with the site itself. So we do another import, the same as we do with PHP. Only in Python you say from, and then you name the package and file, which would be models.view, and here we have models and view.py, and then you're importing the class view, which if we look at the view.py file, we see that we have a class named view. Now if we go back to PHP, we can see what the view functionality is. The view class has a function called printHeader, which basically just says header and then does a content type. So we have this declaring that the content of this page is going to be text and it's going to be HTML. And in Python view file we have a similar thing. First we have to declare an init function, which basically sets up the path to our Python site files. Then we have the print header. The print header, you just define print header, pass in self, and then you say print content type text HTML, and you have to make sure that you put a \n twice. That is to set new lines, which after 2 new lines then Python knows that you are done with your header files. So we can already see a big difference in how the coding style works between PHP and Python. If we go back to PHP, we have the second function of the view class, which is getView. GetView is responsible for pulling the view files for the website and then loading them so that we can see what the site's supposed to look like. So we pass in a file variable and we set the default to a blank string. And then we also pass in the data that we want to populate, and we pass it in as a blank string by default as well. Once we get into the function, when we call this function, it's going to set the full path variable, which is the path to the file that we're pulling. So we do file.php at the end of this string. which is our full path. And then, once we have set the full path, we make an if statement and we check to see if there are any characters in the file, or any words in the file, or anything in the file. If the file has data in it, and if the file exists at that full path, then we want to include the full path. So that include full path will include the file that we declared at the full path variable. Now if we go back to Python, we have a similar piece of functionality here with the getView function, and we do a define getView. You pass in self first, which is part of Python. Then you pass in the file and data, and when we pass in data, we want to make sure to set the default to empty brackets. Now earlier we talked about the initializing function for Python, which sets the base path. So now that we have the base path set, we're going to do what we did in PHP. We're going to take that self path and we're going to set a full path variable based on the base path plus the name of the file, and of course we have to add the .py extension at the end of the file name. So once we've set the full path variable, we then do an isFile check to make sure that the file exists. So we check to see that the file exists at the full path, and we set a file handler. The file handler runs an open function, and you open the full path to view for reading. And then we run a for loop. For each line in the file handler, we will print the template and give all that data into the view. Now if we go back, we can see after we include in the PHP, after we include the models view.php file, we then set a view variable and we set it equal to the view class that we created in view.php. So this is our instantiation of that class. Now after we instantiate the class, the first thing we want to do is run the print header function. So we do view print header. In Python, we go back to the index.py and we see that we do the same thing here. We do a view model variable, set it to the view function or view class from the view class file. Then we set view model dot print header. So both of these languages do the same thing, it's just slightly different syntax. Now in the PHP file, we then run data and we set what data we want to populate. So we're going to set up an array of index and keys for the data. Now to show you where we're getting this site title, logo title, main body text, and copyright info, we're going to go into the views and we're going to take a look at how the PHP is set up. So we have a header.php file, which basically is just the header of an HTML website. You have the doc type declaring what type of HTML it's using. You set the HTML tag and the language to English. You have a header. You have the heading tags for metadata. We're going to set a title, and we use PHP, and this is where our site title variable comes from. We're going to say for the title, we're going to run a PHP command to echo data site title. So we're going to pull the site title out of the data variable, which is an array, and we're going to put it here in the title tag. So whatever you set to the site title inside the data array is going to be the title of your site. And then of course we set the character set meta tag, and we also set up a link to our style sheet, which will be under CSS style.css. Now after the head, we create the body, and we create a wrapper, and then we use a header tag with an h1 tag to set the title of our site. And again, this is where we pick up another of the PHP variables from the data. We're going to do another PHP echo of data, but this time we're going to use logo title. Logo title is the second thing in our array, and that's going to set what goes in this heading tag. So if we go back here and look at the index.php, we can see that site title is set to my PHP website, and then logo title is my PHP logo. So if we look at the website, we can see that the site title is right here in this tab, my PHP website, and my PHP logo as the heading tag. Now we do the same thing in Python, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But for now, we're going to check out the body and footer. Now, you may have noticed that in the header, we don't close the body tag or the HTML tag. That's because in the footer, we're going to close both the body tag and HTML tag. Any of the tags that do not get closed in the header will be closed in the footer, and the body will be sandwiched between the two. So we go straight from the header, where we end with a footer push div, and we create a div with the ID body. Inside this div, we're going to set up what the main context of the site is going to be. We tell this PHP echo command to display the main body text from the data array. And that is declared here. And basically, I've just set up a couple of paragraphs of lorem ipsum text for demonstration. And that's all that goes in the body. So in the footer, we're going to close out all the tags that haven't been closed yet: the footer push, the wrapper, and the body in HTML. We're also going to add in a footer tag, and inside the footer we're going to use PHP to once again define something from our data array. We're going to display our copyright information. And the copyright info is also declared here in the index.php in the data variable, and we just set up the copyright information. Now, after we've set the data and we've told it to print header and all that, we have to actually display the view. So we're going to once again call our view class. We're going to use the getView function, and we're going to pass in two things. We're going to pass in header, and we're going to pass in data. So what we're doing is we are passing into view.php this getView function, okay, and we have file and data. Now if you remember, we have file and then add.php to the end of it. So that's our full path. So the file that we're passing in here is header, and then we're going to do the same thing for body and the same thing for footer, and then we're going to pass in the data to be displayed. So data is just an array with all of the data properties that we want to display. So when we go into view.php, we're going to see that it's going to display that full path. It's going to go and get the header.php first and say, we need to replace this and this, which are our site title and logo title, are two properties from the data array, and we're going to replace them with the data that we pulled in here. And then we're going to do the same thing for body, and the same thing for footer. We're going to replace those data properties with the actual data from the index.php. And we just call that getView function for all three pieces of the website. Now once we've done that, then it will actually display the header, the body, and the footer. So as you can see, the website is displayed, and you don't have to write the same header and footer over and over. You could make multiple web pages for body.php. Instead of doing just one body, you could have the body for each individual website page that you want to put on there, and then just call the getView function here, and you call the header, the footer, and then whatever web page you want to currently display. Now in Python we can do the same thing. We've already told it to print header, and we've set up data the same way that we did with PHP. You're going to create a data variable which is an array. And you can see this is all my lorem ipsum here. We have the first property is site title, and it has the value my Python website. And then we have logo title, which is my Python logo. Main body text, which is again multiple paragraphs of lorem ipsum text. And the last property is copyright info, which we set to whatever we want our copyright to show as. And then after we do that, we use the view model, which is the instantiation of our view class, and we do a getView function call. And we're going to do it 3 times, once for the header, once for the body, and once for the footer. And again, we're going to pass in header, body, footer, and we're also going to pass in data. Now this comes out in the view class, getView self file data. So what we're going to take in is file and data. The file is going to go into our full file path and call the views for header, body, and footer. And then it's going to put the data into them. Now as you can see in the header, we again have our documentation for which type of HTML we have. We have the HTML tag and the heading, which is our metadata. We have a link to our CSS, and we have a title. Now in the title we don't need any tags around the variable because this is a Python file as it's header.py. In PHP we had to put PHP tags around the variable because it still reads HTML as HTML. So in Python we don't need to declare any opening or closing tags, we just declare the variable. So we do a $, and then the variable name, which is site title. And then we go into the body and create a wrapper and a header and footer push. Inside the header we're going to set an h1 tag and again just declare the variable $ logo title. Then we go to the body, and again we have a body div, and we set up the main body text variable. Then we go to the footer, we end the tags that we've called in the header, and we also put in the footer tag and declare the copyright info variable. Now, even though these websites are both built the same, we have two completely different looks, and that is because of the CSS. So the last piece of this is setting up the CSS, and we set up the CSS using the different tags and IDs and classes that we created inside the header, body, and footer. And we do the same thing in Python, so we can actually have two completely different looking sites based off the same style of coding. This allows us to have a very easy framework to build on top of. You build out the HTML in templates in both the PHP and Python, and you then include those and populate the data using your view class and your index to call the view class. And that is how you get PHP website and Python website. And that's all.